They whispered his name like a curse, a shadow that walked through fire and left nothing behind. No one spoke it loudly, not in crowded markets, not in the safety of guarded halls, because names have power, and his felt like an invitation. Some said he was a ghost, a spirit born from the ashes of war. Others claimed he was a punishment, sent to remind the world what it had done. But the truth was far worse, because he was real, and he did not haunt the guilty alone. He walked where memory lingered, where betrayal had taken root, and wherever he went, something followed. Not footsteps, not shadows, but silence. Entire patrols vanished without a trace. Fortresses, once thought unbreakable, stood empty by morning. No battle cries, no warnings, just absence. And in that absence, fear began to grow. Not the kind born from stories, but the kind that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. Even those who had never seen him began to change. Soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons. Leaders spoke more carefully, slept more lightly, as if somehow he could hear them, as if somehow he was always listening. And maybe he was. The shadow of consequence. He did not hunt blindly. This was not chaos. This was not madness. Every step he took, every life he ended, was deliberate, measured. Those who gave the orders, those who had watched the flames rise and said nothing, those who called it peace, they were the first to fall, one by one, not quickly, not mercifully, but precisely, as if each action was not driven by rage, but by memory, because he remembered everything, the faces, the voices, the moment the fire began. And he carried it with him, not as a burden, but as a purpose. The world had taken everything from him, and now he would take something back. But not everything was lost, not entirely, not completely. Somewhere beyond the reach of burning skies, beyond the places where his shadow stretched, something had survived. Her. She was not meant to. No one was. The night the world ended, no one walked away from that fire. And yet, she did. Not untouched. No. The past clung to her in ways no one could see. In the way she moved, quiet, careful. In the way her eyes searched every corner, as if the darkness was expecting to follow her. She remembered. Not everything, not clearly, but enough. Enough to know what had been taken. Enough to know that the world had changed and it would never go back. But where he carried destruction, she carried something else, something fragile, something dangerous in its own way. Hope. Not loud, not naive, but stubborn. The kind that refuses to die, even when everything around it already has. And somehow, without knowing why, their paths were already beginning to intertwine. The kingdom tried to move on. It always does. Empires rebuild, leaders rewrite history. They called it a necessary sacrifice, a tragic end to a long war. And for those who had not seen the flames firsthand, it was easier to believe. But fear has a way of slipping through cracks, of reaching places lies cannot hold. Trade routes grew quiet,
Villages locked their gates before nightfall. Travelers spoke of empty roads and colder winds. And always the same story followed. A figure in the distance, a presence that felt wrong, not seen clearly, not understood, but felt like something watching from just beyond the edge of light, waiting. And the more the stories spread, the more the kingdom began to realize this was not something they could ignore, because legends do not fade when they are still being written. So they sent hunters, not soldiers, not armies, because armies could be seen, could be heard, and whatever he had become did not fight wars anymore. This required something else, something quieter, something just as dangerous. They chose their best, men and women who had faced death and walked away from it, trackers who could follow a trail through ash and shadow, warriors who did not hesitate, and more importantly, those who did not ask questions, because this was not about justice. It was not about right or wrong. It was about control, about erasing something they had never meant to create. The orders were simple: find him, end him, and leave no trace behind. But even as they prepared, as they sharpened their blades and studied the reports, there was something unspoken between them, a doubt, a hesitation, because deep down they understood something their leaders refused to admit. You cannot hunt a shadow if you do not understand where it came from. They moved at night, always at night, following rumors, whispers, fragments of something that never stayed in one place for long. At first, there was nothing, just silence, just the empty remains of places that once held life, burned structures, abandoned paths, the aftermath of something they could not fully comprehend. But then, they began to notice the details, the patterns, the precision. This was not destruction without thought. This was intention. Every mark left behind, every absence told a story. And the deeper they followed, the more that story began to take shape, not of a monster, but of something far more dangerous, a mind, a will, a purpose. And slowly, the hunt began to change, because it no longer felt like they were tracking him. It felt like he was leading them. And somewhere between hunter and hunted, something shifted, not in the world, but in him. Because even in darkness, even after everything he had become, there were fragments that refused to disappear, memories that did not burn, voices that did not fade. And though he buried them, though he silenced them again and again, they remained, waiting. Because no matter how far something falls, no matter how much it changes, there is always a moment when the past finds its way back. And when it does not ask permission. It stands before you, unavoidable, unforgiving. And in that moment, everything changes. They called him a monster because they could not control him. But even monsters remember. And when the past finally stands before him, when what was lost is no longer just a memory, but something real, something alive, the question is no longer what he had become. The question is what he will choose to be.